What's up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki coming at you with the My Hero Academia review. Sorry I'm a little late, been a bit busy today. Plus, ended up wanting to do a video on the My Hero movie trailer that came out, so you can go ahead and watch that if you want. Just diving right into this chapter because immediately we see Endeavor pulling up. He's saying that All Might managed to communicate with them, which means that whatever happened with All Might off screen, we don't know yet. Whether it's they helped him and then went from helping him to go help Deku, or All Might actually did bust out an Iron Man suit and beat the punks up. Whatever the case may be, we know that All Might didn't get murked by those people in this scenario, at least. Endeavor gets there, says it's because of the rain, more than likely to do with ignition. You know, I'm not reading too much into this. Moreover, just Horikoshi commenting on the issue. At the end of the day, they were like 2 kilometers away. There was plenty of time or distance to create time. Plus, they were moving around. Plus, All Might was attacked. So there's a lot of variables that come in and had to decide where they were going to go. We get proof that Hawk's wings aren't actually ready for combat. We talked about this last week. I don't know how many of you who are watching this were here, but basically Hawks is still in no way, shape, or form going to be truly combat ready. It's been emphasized heavily throughout these past couple of chapters that every time you see his back, there's almost no wings there. We're finally seeing some feathers. It's going to be taking quite some time before Hawks is really back in the game. Deku explaining to Hawks, what's going on with Nagant's body. And there's something important to note that, because Deku couldn't fully save Hawks, and Nagant, Hawks is zeroing and noticing that he's prioritizing heavily the mission over not dropping, over his own health, the fact that he's in such critical condition, but he's completely focused on it because he explains what's going on, and Hawks immediately is like, hey, tries to negotiate with Nagant while she's half passed out, explains that he's the replacement, and that's part of one of the things that helps her open up and really be able to talk to him anyway. Deku had already kind of proven he was the real deal. Hawks having the same job as her, but still staying on the side of the light and not turning against the Hero Commission. It's a good way to finally close that story beat up for her, where she can see that while she may have become disillusioned and pained and ended up in that conflict with the Hero Safety Commission president, that doesn't mean that it's hopeless for everyone, and All For One is not actually a better future, which she didn't want to believe anyway, and now she's got the proof, and I think that has more to do with why she took the mission ultimately than any real belief that All For One would have been a better choice or a more transparent society. So, looking at that, Hawks talks about how at the end of the day, the same way that Deku has always had All Might, he's always had Endeavor. He doesn't directly say it to Nagant, but he states that he wasn't always alone. And Nagant is willing to tell him that there's a mansion, Vor Woods, aka the former hideout of the Creature Rejection Clan, which is just another payoff for those of us who remember from chapter 220 of My Villain Academia when that first started off. They took out those people and then they took over their base. Now we see that they still have that as one of the locations they can go back to. I'm curious if Spinner or Dabi told All For One, hey, this is our current primary base as the League of Villains, but it remains to be seen. Now, we get confirmation that All For One reached out to other villains, one of them looking like Chimera from the second movie. In addition to that, one of them looking like the hash-slinging slasher. So we definitely got some high-tier threats coming in, real nighttime horror stuff, you know what I mean? Addressing that. And then Endeavor arrests Overhaul, grabs him off the building, comes down. He's screaming about how she wasn't supposed to get caught. She's supposed to take him to the boss. He's got to tell the boss he's sorry. And Deku looks at Chisaki and basically tells him, you out here tripping about how you hurt the boss, but you need to apologize to a little girl. And Overhaul's first thought when he mentioned Eri wasn't, oh, I hurt her too. It was, of course, with Eri, I could. And he's like, oh yeah, I could save the boss. And so Deku's looking at him and he's, just straight up, nah, I'll honor your deal in Lady Nagant's place, he says. But the idea of Overhaul having to take the mental steps necessary to recognize and do what's necessary to change, that's an entirely different journey. And who knows how that's going to go down. And the reality is that I don't expect Deku to actually take Overhaul to go see Eri right away so he can go apologize. Instead, I think he's saying sit in prison and think about what you really need to do, because I think Overhaul is a potential asset going into the future. I think that quirk erasing bullets, there needs to be a form of quirk therapy as we slide closer and closer to quirk singularity theory just completely overtaking society. We're going to need quirk dampening technology. So while we might not necessarily want to have the police weaponizing quirk erasing bullets, we definitely need to understand that technology and have it. And we have Ujiko, and we have Eri, and we have Overhaul here, where we can now have three pieces that are either in capacity or like in the hands of good guys to a certain degree. And we know that they are willing to use the science that we've seen be used by the villains. That's already been confirmed when it came down to the false death state and the hospital being able to resurrect genius and all that other stuff. So we know that they can take these steps and make these moves, and they will utilize the science of the villains if they're willing to utilize their known tech. I don't want to tell you that Lady Nagant died, but I also don't want to tell you that she lived, because I do think that there's value in the story of her potentially sticking around and helping the Hero Safety Commission, as some people have mentioned. But I do also think the idea of this being one of those moments where Deku has to really deal with somebody dying and failing, and I think this is a part of the journey where people have always wanted to see Deku fail and deal with these consequences. And the scene where he just kind of has his hand on her face for a little while might be him checking for breath. We don't know. It's standard procedure to call for paramedics. You don't know if you can get somebody's heart jump started or not. You don't immediately assume you need a coroner unless you come onto the scene to a fully, completely mangled body that has had zero interactions with you and has clearly been dead and decaying or something like that. As we're going into the mission, I want to make sure it's very clear that we are likely still in the month of April, and at the latest, it would be early May for this encounter, because Hawk still doesn't seem to have anything. But even more importantly, Mount Lady still seems to have a brace around her neck, and if you look at Kamui Wood's arm, it's arguable that that's some bandaging. So it's very possible that most of these people aren't up to snuff for actual meaningful combat, and they're establishing a perimeter. Especially when you look at the fact that as the chapter continues, we see Deku going through the place, we see Endeavor actually have something to say, but we don't have any other hero seemingly on site with Deku and Endeavor. It seems like Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, Edshot, all of them are standing on standby. And this makes sense too, because Janus is also injured. We know that, so basically none of these heroes are actually ready for the raid. You see, he's like, good luck in there, Hawks isn't going in, be cautious. You don't give people advice on being safe as they head into a building if you're going to be fighting alongside them. Not as they're going in. So Endeavor's telling Deku not to be reckless. We see them going into the mansion. Deku makes it a point to be like, they can't take one for all. I need to go beat them. It's important to note that Deku's been reckless, not focused on his own health really. Hawks is known as the man that's too fast for his own good, so that influence is pushing Deku, and he's just a little too fast. They're kind of really rushing this, and there's a certain level of arrogance that you really have to think about going into this, because they could have been walking into a nest of 8, 9, 10 other Nagant level villains, plus All For One, plus Shigaraki, plus Dabi in theory could be with them, because it's all one big League of Villains partnership. So what's going on here? Like, the idea that Deku, Endeavor, and Hawks and Genius and all these people went on site knowing they could have been confronting like a true army is some insanity to the highest degree. But they are fortunate in the sense that that's not the case as they go into this. They don't have to deal with an entire army or platoon of various hardened Tartarus criminals that were kept in the darkest depths. But the thing that is important to note here is that when they finally do confront All For One, in the sense that they find a recording that he left there to laugh in Izuku's face and tell him that, hey, I figured, you'd be able to do this, and if so, I figured she'd also waver. I figured once you got here, you'd want to know. But guess what? I didn't make her do anything. I didn't threaten her. I didn't, tell her, hey, you gotta do this. He didn't put her at finger point like he did the air pilot for the helicopter. And that part is true. But that kind of lines up with this speech that he gives, where he goes on, where he says, people go on and on about quirks, preaching the merits of individualism, but ours is a regimented society under tight control, one where the wrong sort of individuality gets you ostracized and purged. Democracy, socialism, it doesn't matter. There are no exceptions because at the root of all of this, predates the concept of human society altogether. It's the principle that governs all social organisms. The path you've chosen is a thorny one. Every battle grinds away at the soul with no end in sight. Now, the idea of him bringing up like democracy and socialism specifically is that the society that All for One generally seems to go for is one that is anarchist in nature. There seems to be like while yes, he will take power and utilize it and exploit people around, he also redistributes the power. He's very exploitive in nature. He's very much if he's accusing Deku of seeing things like democracy and asking other people and like the people around you their opinion of how the world should work, and then trying to create a world that makes the most people happy, and that is what we all want, and the byproduct does create, like as you mentioned, these inadvertent oppressions at times. But then he's also saying, well, socialism, where you make it a point to integrate like the government and all these other things. No, these things that are designed around focusing on the working class and the majority, he's saying those don't necessarily matter. What he's saying is ultimately society still focuses on the individual, and he's taking that to the extreme with the more anarcho-capitalist idea, where he's always talking about like, well, it's not that I did anything wrong, it's that I had a good to trade, and therefore I traded goods with someone, and I gave them a quirk in exchange for labor, and because I paid them in this quirk for their labor, whatever happens isn't really on me, it's on them because they asked for this and I just gave it to them. And so it's okay, it doesn't matter if the exchange isn't fully equal, I'm in charge. And this is kind of something that I really feel like I could dive into, but that would turn into like a really long video discussing all the ways that All for One has kind of set himself up as like the ultimate opportunist and the most exploitive character in the series, giving characters like Blackbeard and One Piece a run for their money as far as opportunistic swoop-ins. So, and it's important to note that the very last page has him doing the Uncle Sam pose. So it's very, very likely this is supposed to be a commentary on corporal Americanism, but that is something that we will get into in the All for One video, because that is definitely a topic that is way too long for this. So let me know what you guys thought of the chapter. I think this is an especially great one. The whole blowing stuff up at the end, I'm not too worried about. Deku's got danger sense. Most of the heroes weren't directly in the building, so they should be blown clear. Endeavor has fire manipulation. There's very little reason for them to actually get caught in this, especially with danger sense and the ability to move at hypersonic speeds. In the case of Deku, quick explosive usage of 45% could easily get him out of this explosion yield, or at least make it so that he's not going to get destroyed by it. We've seen him take some pretty intense blows before. That said, this giving him a slight injury would force him to slow down and create that space that All for One needs while he's scrambling society. And he did mention that he wasn't going to try to let them have any rest, so the idea of us getting to skip all the way till May, like I mentioned earlier, just doesn't seem likely. So let me know what you guys think. Aniki, enjoyed this. Hope to see you guys next Sunday for the Church of MHA. Hope to do that All for One video. I might try to actually get that in there, but no promises because I'm a busy man. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. I'm Aniki, and I'm out.